All right, let's discuss Russia's aggression on Ukraine as a recent strike on Vinnytsia has left at least 23 persons dead. Livingstone Wechie, an expert in international constitutional law, joins me from Abuja via Zoom. Good to have you join us.
Good to have you too.
Let's talk about this recent attack in Vinnytsia before we move on to the concerns in Europe. We're now seeing attacks in areas that are not frontline, in civilian areas as well. Do you think there is now a change in strategy, or what exactly could be playing out here?
So there are quite disturbing developments in Ukraine, and particularly knowing that international rules of engagement indicate that during such aggression, the focus should be on military installations. Whilst the war in Ukraine is totally condemnable, and while it's my view that what is playing out in Ukraine is a Western instigated terrorism because the war was needless ab initio, I want to say that Russia should also tread with caution and watch the civilian population, because these are unarmed population, and they are also not dangerous species or agents. It is worrisome that children have died. We hear about 23 people have been killed. And part of what bothers watchers the most is the fact that Ukraine is daily destroyed. And it appears nobody is taking it to heart. I think at this point, whatever the situations might be, the lives of the innocent people of Ukraine and Russia alike will be considered whether the war is needful in the face of the loss and wanton destruction of life and property, because the rate at which lives are being lost right now in Ukraine is beginning to turn the war into something else. If two nations are at war at this modern stage in our global history, humanitarianism should be on the table. It is not anything any watcher should clap his hands. It is condemnable, but I still believe that whatever be the rooms for diplomacy and diplomatic channels should be thoroughly heightened so as to arrest. We heard recently that Russia was reconsidering its aggression and to slow down on the attacks. But again, I believe that the leadership of the West has not done enough. They have continued to push Ukraine to continue in this war of attrition, this wanton aggression. They should consider the options for concessions. Whatever concessions should be made, it remains one global world.
But let me jump in here, Mr. Livingstone. Yes. You seem to be thinking that the West is not interested in finding a diplomatic path. But when you, just recently, the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, said that this war has barely started. Seeing that this is an opportunity, or this is Russia looking to correct, or this is just an attempt rather at geopolitical correctness or correction. What sort of dimension do you think that this war is likely to take? And at this point, is there a path for, or is there a road to diplomacy?
Before the war started, there was a treaty that was already binding Russia and Ukraine. And that treaty was fundamental to their relationships as to determine whether this type of situation or not should arise in the face of a breach. And it does appear that that treaty has been thoroughly breached from allegations from Russia. And, you know, one of the problems of this war is that it appears also that the West and the NATO, as it is, undermined Russia's capacity in this war. You can see the consequent impact in the global economy, resulting in the grain crisis, gas crisis around the world, all traced to what is going on currently around. You know, compromise. There is high rate of inflation. There is high rates of hunger around the world. There's food crisis going on around the world. There's gas crisis around the world because the world felt that, or Russia, the West, under NATO leadership, felt like Russia would not sustain this struggle for a very long time. But I think that Russia has prepared for a day like this 10 years ahead. and the West may have undermined or miscalculated Russia's disposition at this time. So what part of what may be taking place in the coming years or in the coming months may be an advanced aggression, which to me is still avoidable. There is no human structure around the world that would defy in absoluteness the principle of diplomatic engagement. What is key here may be the issue of concessions, where NATO and the Western allies insist that Ukraine should defend themselves even at the risk of their nation's population at this level of death rates being recorded, and pushes them to continue with this type of war. It goes to show that, you know, it appears that human life is no longer of the essence. I believe that whatever be the demands of Russia, all items on the table remain negotiable. But Ukraine cannot continue to suffer this level of loss and watch the world push it into its own self-destruct. This is not to justify the push by Ukraine to protect their identity and to exercise the rights of their territorial integrity, but to say that the lives of the citizens of Ukraine should matter the most to the president and its NATO and Western allies, beyond the pride and arrogance of the West in trying to prove a point, a needless point to Russia. You don't put a Ukraine side by side, a very sophisticated and thoroughly ambitious country like Russia, and ask Ukraine to continue to engage them. For how long can Ukraine sustain this war at the level that Russia operates? And Russia has issued a threat that should the United States of America, NATO, and its allied nations show any presence in this war, they stand the chance of escalating into a third world war. So these are things that should worry anybody, that we should now put up the whole items on the table and strictly consider areas of concession so that we can stop this daylight destruction of lives and property, which is bringing so much pain and has turned to global economic agony and resulting in global economic depression. So those are issues that we should be looking at.
Mm. Let's bear in mind that Ukraine was invaded and not the aggressor. I wish we could talk more about that, especially because now analysts are saying that Ukraine probably should be attacking Russia territories as well. And I also wish we could talk about this dissonance that we're now hearing from European leaders, especially from Viktor Orban.
Yes,
but I'm afraid that's the much we can take. I wish we could really talk about that. Livingstone Wechie, expert international constitutional law. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.